The grand hall of the Interstellar Academy shimmered under the glow of 1,000 tiny lights. It was a place where dreams were forged, where young men and women from across galaxies came to train for lives of service, exploration, and battle. Cadets filled the room, their uniforms crisp and polished, their faces glowing with pride. They laughed, chatted, and compared stories of their final missions before graduation. But not everyone shared in the joy. At the edge of the crowd stood Jae-min, his presence almost invisible amidst the sea of confident cadets. His armor, once gleaming silver, now bore the marks of countless battles, deep dents, jagged scratches, and patches hastily welded together. It looked out of place among the pristine suits of his peers. To them, it wasn't a sign of bravery or resilience. It was an eyesore. A joke. "Hey, Jae-min," called out Hyung-seok, a tall, broad-shouldered cadet with a reputation for being both arrogant and skilled. His voice carried easily over the noise of the hall, drawing attention to Jae-min. "What happened to your armor? Did you trip over your own boots during training?" Laughter rippled through the crowd. Some cadets snickered openly, while others tried to hide their amusement behind polite smiles. Even a few instructors exchanged amused glances, though none stepped forward to defend him. Jae-min didn't react. He simply adjusted the weight of his helmet in his hands and stared at the floor. His expression unreadable. Eun-G, a petite engineer with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind, watched the scene unfold from across the room. She had always been curious about Jae-min. Unlike the others, she didn't see his battered armor as something to mock. Instead, she saw history etched into every dent and scratch. She wondered how many times he had narrowly escaped death, how many sacrifices he had made to earn those scars. Still, she kept her distance, unsure if he would welcome her curiosity or rebuff it entirely. The ceremony hadn't even begun yet, but the tension was already thick in the air. The Interstellar Academy prided itself on producing the best warriors, strategists, and leaders in the galaxy. Graduation day was supposed to be a celebration of that excellence. Yet here was Jae-min, standing quietly in the corner, looking more like a relic of some forgotten war than a rising star. As the minutes ticked by, the chatter grew louder. Hyung-seok continued to dominate the conversation, regaling anyone who would listen with tales of his victories in the field. "You should have seen me take down the rogue drone last month," he boasted, flexing his arms dramatically. "It was so fast, I swear it left streaks in the sky." A few cadets clapped, impressed despite themselves. Others rolled their eyes, tired of hearing the same stories over and over again. But no matter what they thought of Hyung-seok, one thing was clear. He was the golden boy of the academy. Everything about him screamed perfection, from his flawless combat record to his immaculate uniform. Compared to him, Jae-min might as well have been invisible. Finally, Admiral Soo-hyun entered the hall, her commanding presence silencing the room instantly. Dressed in full ceremonial regalia, she strode toward the podium with an air of authority that demanded respect. Her piercing gaze swept over the assembled cadets, lingering briefly on Jae-min before moving on. When she spoke, her voice echoed powerfully, filling every corner of the vast chamber. "Today marks the culmination of years of hard work, sacrifice, and dedication," she began. "Each of you has proven yourselves worthy of wearing the uniform of the Interstellar Academy. But remember, true strength is not measured by medals or accolades, it is measured by character." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. For a moment, Jae-min felt a flicker of hope. Maybe today wouldn't be so bad after all. Maybe anyone would finally see past the surface and recognize the effort he had poured into getting here. But then Hyung-seok leaned over to whisper to his friends, loud enough for Jae-min to hear. "Yeah, sure. Character. That's why his armor looks like it got hit by a meteor shower." More laughter erupted, cutting through the solemn atmosphere like a knife. Jaemin clenched his fist but said nothing. He had learned long ago that words couldn't shield him from ridicule. Only actions could do that. And soon, very soon, he would have his chance to prove himself, not just to Hyung Seok, but to everyone. As Admiral Su Hyung continued her speech, Jaemin let his thoughts drift back to the days when his armor had first been handed to him. It hadn't always been damaged. Once, it had been as pristine as any other suit in the academy. But that was before the battles, before the sacrifices, before the nights spent repairing it piece by piece under the dim light of a dying star. Each mark told a story, a narrow escape, a desperate stand, a moment of triumph snatched from the jaws of defeat. No one else knew those stories. No one else cared to ask. To them, he was just the guy with the broken armor. But Jaemin carried something far heavier than the weight of his suit. Beneath its battered exterior lay secrets that could change everything they thought they knew about heroism, sacrifice, and what it truly meant to be strong. For now, though, he remained silent, letting the whispers wash over him like waves against a rocky shore. The ceremony was only beginning, and already the stage was set for something extraordinary. Unbeknownst to the others, this day would go down in history, not because of Hyung Seok's boasts or Yoonji's quiet admiration, but because of the man who stood unnoticed in the shadows, waiting for his moment to shine. And when that moment came, the hall would fall silent, not with mockery, but with awe. The grand hall buzzed with anticipation as Admiral Su Hyun stepped away from the podium, leaving behind her opening remarks. Her words about character and strength still lingered in the air, though they seemed to have little effect on most of the cadets. For them, this day was all about proving who was the best. And now, it was time for the final test. Admiral Su Hyun raised her hand, signaling for silence. "Before we proceed with the formalities of graduation," she announced, her voice steady and commanding, "we will hold one last combat simulation. This exercise will determine which cadet among you deserves the Valor Medal or recognition reserved only for those who demonstrate unparalleled skill, strategy, and courage." A murmur of excitement rippled through the crowd. The Valor Medal was the highest honor the Academy could bestow upon a cadet. It wasn't just a trophy. It was a symbol of excellence, a mark of distinction that would follow its recipient for life. Every cadet straightened their posture, eager to claim the title. Hyung Seok didn't hesitate. He shot to his feet, raising his hand high. "I'll take the challenge," he declared, his voice booming with confidence. His friends cheered him on, patting him on the back as if victory were already his. Hyung Seok's reputation preceded him. He had never lost a single combat simulation, real or simulated. To many, he was the obvious choice. Others quickly followed suit. Cadets lined up to volunteer, each trying to outdo the next with boasts of their own achievements. Some spoke of their perfect scores in tactical drills, while others recounted daring maneuvers during field exercises. The room became a cacophony of self-promotion, each voice louder than the last. Amidst the chaos, Jaemin remained seated, his hands resting lightly on his knees. He didn't raise his hand or shout for attention. Instead, he watched quietly, observing the scene unfold around him. Yoonji noticed his stillness and frowned. She wanted to say something to encourage him to step forward, but she held her tongue. After all, what could she say? If Jaemin chose not to participate, it was his decision. Finally, Admiral Su Hyun held up her hand again, silencing the room. "Very well," she said, scanning the line of eager volunteers. "Each of you will face a series of challenges designed to push your limits. But remember, this is not just about individual skill. You must also demonstrate teamwork and adaptability." With that, the cadets were led to the training arena, a massive dome equipped with holographic technology capable of simulating any environment imaginable. As they entered, the space transformed before their eyes, shifting from an empty chamber into a dense jungle filled with towering trees and thick underbrush. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of distant gunfire echoed ominously. Jaemin walked in last, trailing behind the others. His damaged armor drew more than a few snickers. "Look at him," whispered one cadet to another. "Does he really think he can keep up with us?" Another chimed in. "Maybe he's hoping his armor will scare the enemies away." Yoonji glared at them but said nothing. She knew better than to defend Jaemin outright. It would only make things worse for him. Still, she couldn't help feeling a pang of frustration. Why couldn't they see past the surface? The simulation began without further delay. The cadets were divided into small teams and tasked with navigating the jungle, neutralizing enemy forces, and securing a hidden objective deep within the terrain. At first glance, it seemed straightforward enough. But as soon as the mission started, complications arose. Hyung-seok took charge of his team immediately, barking orders with the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "Spread out," he commanded. "We'll cover more ground that way." His teammates complied eagerly, fanning out across the jungle floor. They moved swiftly, their movements precise and coordinated. Within minutes, they encountered their first wave of holographic enemies, shadowy figures armed with energy rifles. Hyung-seok's team reacted quickly, taking down the attackers with ruthless efficiency. Their success boosted their morale, and Hyung-seok grinned triumphantly. "Piece of cake," he muttered under his breath. But his confidence proved premature. As they pressed deeper into the jungle, the environment grew increasingly hostile. Thick vines tangled their legs, forcing them to slow down. Sudden rainstorms drenched their equipment, causing malfunctions. And then there were the traps, hidden pitfalls, and explosive devices triggered by the slightest misstep. One by one, Hyung-seok's team members fell victim to the hazards. Some stumbled into pits lined with spikes, their holographic forms dissolving into static as they were eliminated from the simulation. Others triggered explosives, sending shockwaves through the group. By the time they reached the halfway point, only Hyung-seok remained standing. Meanwhile, Jaemin moved through the jungle at his own pace. Unlike the others, he didn't rush headlong into danger. Instead, he observed carefully, studying the terrain and anticipating potential threats. When he came across a patch of quicksand disguised as solid ground, he skirted around it effortlessly. When automated turrets emerged from the foliage, he disabled them with calculated precision, using fragments of debris to block their sensors. His approach earned him no praise from the other cadets. In fact, most barely noticed him at all. To them, he was just another participant struggling to survive. But Yoonji, watching from the observation deck above, saw something different. She marveled at how Jaemin adapted to every obstacle, turning disadvantages into opportunities. His damaged armor slowed him down slightly, but it also made him harder to detect. Its battered appearance blended seamlessly with the rugged landscape, making him nearly invisible to both enemies and allies alike. As the simulation wore on, the challenges intensified. A sudden earthquake split the ground apart, creating deep chasms that forced the remaining cadets to improvise crossings. Acidic fog rolled in, corroding unprotected equipment and forcing everyone to seek shelter. Through it all, Jaemin persevered. He climbed sheer cliffs with ease, leaped over chasms with uncanny agility, and navigated the toxic mist with calm determination. By the time the final stretch approached, only 3 cadets remained: Hyung-seok, Jaemin, and a young woman named Ji-yoon, whose tactical brilliance had carried her this far. The objective lay ahead, a fortified bunker guarded by waves of relentless enemies. Whoever reached it first would secure the Valor Medal, Hyong-seok charged forward recklessly, firing wildly at anything that moved. His boldness served him well initially, allowing him to break through the first line of defense. But his aggression left him exposed, and a surprise ambush caught him off guard. His holographic form flickered and vanished, leaving him defeated. Ji-yoon fared better, relying on stealth and cunning to slip past the guards. However, her luck ran out when she triggered a hidden minefield. The explosion sent her sprawling, and she too disappeared from the simulation. That left Jae-min. Alone, battered, and outnumbered, he faced the final gauntlet. The bunker loomed ahead, its entrance flanked by heavily armed adversaries. For a moment, he hesitated, assessing the situation. Then, with deliberate movements, he activated a smoke grenade hidden in his armor. Thick clouds billowed out, obscuring the battlefield. Using the cover, he darted between cover points, picking off enemies one by one with pinpoint accuracy. When the smoke cleared, Jae-min stood at the entrance of the bunker, his breathing steady despite the chaos around him. He stepped inside, triggering the simulation's conclusion. The jungle faded away, replaced once again by the sterile walls of the training arena. For a long moment, silence reigned. The cadets stared at Jae-min, stunned by what they had witnessed. Even Admiral Soo-hyun looked impressed, her stern expression softening ever so slightly. Yoonji smiled to herself, knowing that Jae-min had proven exactly what she suspected all along. True strength wasn't about appearances. It was about resilience, adaptability, and heart. And yet, as Jae-min removed his helmet and surveyed the room, he felt no sense of triumph. There was still much to be revealed, secrets buried beneath the scars of his armor, stories waiting to be told. But for now, he allowed himself a small smile. The mockery had ended, replaced by something far more powerful: respect. The challenge was over, but the journey was just beginning. The training arena was eerily quiet as the cadets filed out, their minds still reeling from what they had just witnessed. Jae-min's performance in the simulation had been nothing short of extraordinary. Where others had faltered, he had thrived. Where chaos had reigned, he had remained calm. And yet, despite his undeniable skill, there was an air of mystery surrounding him, a question that lingered in the minds of everyone present. Back in the Grand Hall, Admiral Soo-hyun stood at the podium once more, her sharp eyes scanning the crowd. She cleared her throat, drawing the attention of the cadets. Today's simulation tested not only your combat abilities, but also your resolve and adaptability, she began. Her voice carried a weight that silenced even the faintest whispers. And while every participant displayed commendable effort, one cadet stood above the rest. She paused, letting her words sink in. Then, with deliberate slowness, she turned her gaze toward Jae-min. Cadet Jae-min has demonstrated exceptional strength under pressure. His actions today were a testament to true leadership and courage. She gestured for him to step forward. Jae-min hesitated for a moment before walking up to the stage. The eyes of every cadet followed him, some filled with admiration, others with confusion, and a few with lingering skepticism. Hyong-seok, who had previously mocked Jae-min without restraint, now wore an expression of reluctant respect. Even Yoonji, who had always believed in Jae-min's potential, found herself holding her breath as the spotlight fell on him. Admiral Soo-hyun studied Jae-min carefully, her gaze lingering on his battered armor. Finally, she spoke again. "This armor you wear, it is not standard issue. It bears the markings of extensive use, far beyond what any cadet should endure during training. Tell me, Cadet Jae-min, where did you acquire it?" The room fell silent. All eyes were on Jae-min now, waiting for his response. For a long moment, he said nothing, his fingers tracing the deepest dent on his chest plate. It was a question he had avoided for years, a story he had kept buried beneath layers of silence. But here, in front of his peers and mentors. He realized he could no longer hide. It belonged to Commander Kyung-soo, Jaemin finally said, his voice steady but soft. The name sent a ripple through the crowd. Everyone in the academy knew of Kyung-soo, the legendary hero, who had sacrificed himself during the siege of Zaltharis to save an entire fleet. His bravery had become the stuff of myths, stories told to inspire new generations of cadets. Gasps erupted throughout the hall. Some cadets exchanged shocked glances, while others leaned forward, eager to hear more. Admiral Soo-hyun's expression softened, though her posture remained rigid. Commander Kyung-soo's armor, she murmured, almost to herself. How did it come into your possession? Jaemin took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he was about to reveal. I wasn't always a cadet, he admitted, his voice growing stronger with each word. I was a refugee, a child trying to survive on the edges of war. My home planet was destroyed by raiders when I was young. Everything I knew was gone in an instant. He paused, his gaze drifting to the floor as memories flooded back. Commander Kyung-soo found me during the siege. He saved my life, risking his own to pull me out of the wreckage. When the enemy closed in, he gave me his armor to protect me. He told me to run, to live, to carry on the fight. And then, he stayed behind. A heavy silence settled over the room. No one dared to speak. Even Hyung-seok, who had spent so much time ridiculing Jaemin, looked visibly shaken. Yoonji felt tears welling up in her eyes, though she blinked them away quickly. She had suspected there was more to Jaemin's story, but she hadn't imagined it would be this profound. I promised myself I would honor his sacrifice, Jaemin continued, his voice unwavering now. Every scratch, every dent, every repair, these aren't just marks of battle. They're reminders of why I fight. This armor isn't perfect because it doesn't represent perfection. It represents survival. It represents hope. Admiral Soo-hyun nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. Cadet Jaemin, she said, her tone softer than before, you have shown us today that true strength does not lie in appearances. It lies in the heart. Commander Kyung-soo chose well when he entrusted his legacy to you. Her words hung in the air, resonating deeply with everyone in the room. For the first time, Jaemin saw genuine respect in the eyes of his peers. Gone were the sneers and jeers. Instead, there was awe and perhaps a hint of guilt from those who had mocked him so cruelly. But not everyone was ready to accept his revelation without question. Hyung-seok stepped forward, his jaw tight with tension. So you're saying you didn't earn that armor? He challenged, his voice cutting through the quiet. You didn't fight for it like the rest of us. You just inherited it. Jaemin turned to face him, his expression calm but resolute. No, I didn't fight for it, he replied. But I fought in it. Every scar on this armor tells a story of battles I've survived, enemies I've faced, and sacrifices I've made. If that's not enough for you, then maybe you don't understand what it means to fight at all. Hyung-seok opened his mouth to retort, but no words came out. He glanced around the room, searching for support, but found none. Even his closest friends avoided meeting his gaze. Instead, they stared at Jaemin, their expressions a mixture of admiration and shame. Anji couldn't stay silent any longer. She stepped forward, her voice firm but kind. Hyung-seok, stop, she said. Jaemin has proven himself over and over again, not just today, but every day since he joined the academy. If you can't see that, then maybe the problem isn't with him. Maybe it's with you. Her words struck a nerve. Hyung-seok clenched his fists but said nothing. Slowly, he backed away, retreating to the edge of the crowd. The tension in the room eased slightly, though the atmosphere remained charged with emotion. Admiral Soo-hyun broke the silence once more. Cadet Jaemin, she said, addressing him directly, you have earned not only the Valor Medal, but also the respect of everyone here. Commander Kyung-soo's legacy lives on through you, and I have no doubt that you will continue to make him proud." With that, she motioned for an instructor to bring forth the medal, a gleaming silver disc engraved with the emblem of the Interstellar Academy. As she pinned it to Jaemin's chest, the room erupted into applause. It started softly, hesitant at first, but soon grew louder, filling the hall with a thunderous ovation. Jae-min stood tall, his heart swelling with pride not for the medal itself, but for the recognition of everything he had endured to get here. For the first time in years, he felt seen, not as the boy with the damaged armor, but as the warrior he had become. As the ceremony resumed, Eunji approached Jae-min, her smile warm and genuine. "You did it," she said simply. "They finally understand." Jae-min nodded, though his expression remained thoughtful. "Maybe," he replied. "But understanding isn't the same as knowing. There's still more to my story, things I haven't told anyone. Things I may never tell." Eunji tilted her head, curious but respectful. "When you're ready," she said, "I'll listen." For now, that was enough. The revelation had changed everything, but it was only the beginning. The scars beneath Jaemin's armor ran deeper than anyone could imagine, and the truth of who he really was had yet to fully emerge. Still, as he stood amidst the applause, surrounded by people who finally saw him for who he truly was, Jae-min allowed himself a rare moment of peace. The journey ahead would be long and difficult, but for the first time, he felt ready to face it, not alone, but with all eyes who understood the weight of his burden. The banquet hall sparkled with soft lights, the atmosphere a mix of celebration and reflection. Cadets mingled freely, their laughter filling the air as they shared stories from the day's events. Plates of exotic foods from across the galaxy were spread across long tables, and glasses clinked together in toast to friendship, bravery, and the future. Yet amidst the joy, there was an undercurrent of curiosity, a desire to know more about the quiet cadet who had captured everyone's attention. Jaemin sat at a corner table, his battered armor resting beside him. Despite the medal pinned to his chest, he fell out of place among the festivities. People glanced at him often, their expressions ranging from admiration to lingering questions. He didn't mind the attention. It was the unspoken expectation that weighed on him. They wanted answers he wasn't sure he was ready to give. Eun-G approached cautiously, balancing 2 cups of sparkling cider. She slid into the seat across from Jae-min and placed 1 cup in front of him. "You look like you could use this," she said with a small smile. Jae-min accepted the drink but didn't touch it. Instead, he stared at the bubbles rising in the glass, lost in thought. Eunji watched him for a moment before speaking again. "They're curious, you know," she said gently. "Not just about your armor, but about you. About what makes you. Well, you." He nodded slowly, still avoiding her gaze. "I figured as much," he replied. His voice was calm, but there was a heaviness to it, as if carrying secrets had worn him down over time. Eun-G leaned forward slightly, her tone earnest. "You don't have to tell them everything right now. But maybe sharing a little would help. Not for them, but for you." Jaemin looked up then, meeting her eyes for the first time. There was something in her expression, understanding perhaps, or empathy, that made him pause. He took a deep breath, considering her words. Finally, he spoke. "It's not just about the armor," he began. "There's more beneath it than anyone realizes." Without another word, he reached for the clasps holding his chest plate in place. One by one, he removed the pieces of his armor, setting them carefully on the table. The room grew quieter as nearby cadets noticed what he was doing. Soon, a small crowd had gathered, their whispers fading into silence as Jae-min revealed the truth hidden beneath his suit. Beneath the dents and scratches lay scars deep, jagged lines crisscrossing his arms and torso. Some were old, faded with time, while others were newer, still pink and raw. But the most shocking revelation came when he rolled up his sleeves, exposing intricate cybernetic enhancements fused seamlessly into his skin. Metallic plates shimmered faintly in the light, blending with his flesh in a way that was both fascinating and unsettling. HYEONG-SEOK pushed his way to the front of the crowd, his face pale with disbelief. What is this?" he stammered, unable to tear his eyes away. Jae-min met his gaze steadily. "These aren't just upgrades," he explained. "They're repairs. Pieces of me that couldn't heal on their own." He gestured to the scars and implants. "Every battle I fought has left its mark, not just on my armor, but on my body. These enhancements weren't given to me because I'm special. They were necessary to keep me alive." The room was utterly silent now, every cadet frozen in place. Yoonji's hands trembled slightly as she processed what she was seeing. She had suspected Jae-min carried burdens far heavier than anyone realized, but this was beyond anything she could have imagined. "I didn't choose this life," Jae-min continued, his voice steady despite the weight of his words. "When Commander Kyung-soo saved me, he gave me a second chance. But surviving isn't easy. Every mission, every fight, it takes a piece of you. Sometimes literally." He touched one of the metallic plates on his arm, his fingers tracing its edge. "These aren't trophies. They're reminders of how close I've come to losing everything." Yoonji swallowed hard, her throat tight with emotion. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" she asked softly. "You didn't have to carry this alone." Jae-min shook his head. "It's not something people want to hear," he said. "Everyone here dreams of glory, of being remembered as heroes. But the truth is, heroism isn't glamorous. It's painful, messy. Most of the time, no one sees the cost until it's too late." His words struck a chord with those listening. Even Hyang-seok, who had spent so much time mocking Jae-min, seemed shaken. For all his boasts about skill and strength, he had never faced the kind of sacrifices Jae-min described. None of them had. One of the instructors stepped forward, breaking the spell of silence. "Cadet Jae-min," he said, his voice tinged with respect, "what you've endured, it's extraordinary. You've shown us that true courage isn't about being fearless. It's about facing fear and pain and pushing through anyway." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Slowly, one by one, the cadets began to clap. At first, it was hesitant, almost tentative. But soon, the applause grew louder, filling the hall with a sound that was equal parts admiration and gratitude. Jae-min lowered his gaze, overwhelmed by the sudden outpouring of support. He hadn't expected this, not after years of ridicule and isolation. Yet here they were, acknowledging his struggles in a way that felt genuine and heartfelt. Eunji reached across the table, placing a hand on his. "You don't have to carry this alone anymore," she said firmly. "We're here. All of us." Her words brought a rare smile to Jae-min's face. For the first time, he allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't as alone as he had always thought. As the evening wore on, the mood shifted. Conversations turned from lighthearted banter to deeper discussions about sacrifice, resilience, and the realities of war. Cadets who had once dismissed Jae-min now sought him out, eager to learn from his experiences. Even Hyang-seok approached him, though his usual bravado was notably absent. I'm sorry," Hyang-seok said awkwardly, rubbing the back of his neck. "For all the things I said. I didn't understand. I still don't, really. But I want to." Jae-min studied him for a moment before nodding. "Apology accepted," he said simply. There was no bitterness in his tone, only acceptance. He knew better than anyone that understanding didn't come easily. It had to be earned. By the end of the night, the banquet hall felt different. The air was lighter, the camaraderie stronger. Jamin's revelation had changed something fundamental within the group, forcing them to confront truths they had previously ignored. They saw now that being a warrior wasn't just about winning battles, it was about enduring losses. Both visible and invisible dot, as Jamin packed away the last pieces of his armor, he felt a sense of closure wash over him. The weight he had carried for so long hadn't disappeared entirely, but it felt lighter somehow. Sharing his story hadn't erased his scars, but it had given them meaning, a purpose beyond mere survival. EU joined him as he stood to leave. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. Jamin smiled faintly. "I think I will be," he replied. And for the first time in years, he truly believed it. The truth beneath his armor had been revealed, and though it had been painful to share, it had also brought him closer to those around him. In opening up, he had found not weakness, but strength, the kind that comes from connection, understanding, and the courage to let others in. And that, more than any medal or accolade, was worth fighting for. The final hours of the banquet passed in a blur of quiet conversations and shared glances. The cadets, who had once laughed at Jamin's damaged armor, now looked at him with a mix of awe and guilt. They whispered among themselves, piecing together fragments of his story and marveling at the strength it must have taken to endure so much. Even Hyong-seok, whose arrogance had defined him for years, seemed humbled, speaking only when spoken to and avoiding the sharp remarks that were once his trademark. Jamin moved through the crowd like a ghost, not seeking attention, but unable to escape it. Every step he took drew eyes, some curious, others admiring, and a few still uncertain. He didn't mind the stares as much as he thought he would. After revealing the truth about his scars and cybernetic enhancements, a strange sense of relief had settled over him. For years, he had carried the weight of his secrets alone. Now, though the burden hadn't vanished completely, it felt lighter, as if sharing it had cracked open a door he had long kept locked. Yuan-ji stayed close by his side, her presence steady and reassuring. She didn't try to fill the silence between them. Instead, she simply walked beside him, ready to listen if he wanted to talk, or to offer a smile if he needed encouragement. Her quiet support meant more to Jamin than words could express. It reminded him that even in a room full of people, true connection came from moments like these, small, unspoken gestures that spoke volumes. As the night wore on, Admiral Suhayan called for everyone's attention once more. The cadets quieted quickly, their focus shifting to the podium where she stood. Her expression was solemn, yet there was a warmth in her eyes as she addressed the group. "Today has been a day of reflection," she began, her voice carrying clearly across the hall. "We've celebrated achievements, faced challenges, and uncovered truths that will stay with us long after this ceremony ends." She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "Cadet Jamin, you have shown us what it means to carry burdens without complaint, to fight not for glory but for survival, and to honor those who came before you. You remind us that true strength is not found in perfection but in resilience." In imperfection, her gaze swept over the assembled cadets, lingering briefly on Jamin before moving on. "Each of you leaves here tonight changed, not just because of what you've accomplished, but because of what you've learned. Remember this moment. Carry it with you as you step into the unknown." With that, she raised her glass in a toast. "To the future," she said firmly. "And to all of you." The cadets followed suit, lifting their glasses high. Cheers erupted, filling the hall with a sound that was both triumphant and bittersweet. This was the end of one chapter and the beginning of another, a transition marked not by medals or accolades, but by growth, understanding, and the courage to face whatever lay ahead. When the formalities concluded, the cadets began to disperse, some heading outside to enjoy the cool night air, others lingering to savor the last moments of camaraderie. Jamin found himself standing near the entrance, watching as the crowd thinned. He wasn't sure whether to stay or go. Part of him wanted to slip away quietly, to retreat to the solitude he had always known. But another part, the part that had begun to trust in the connections he'd made, wanted to stay just a little longer. Eung noticed his hesitation and stepped closer. "You don't have to leave yet," she said softly. "Not unless you want to." Jaemin glanced at her, then back at the dwindling crowd. "I'm not used to being noticed," he admitted. "It's strange, having people look at me differently." She nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. "Change isn't easy," she replied. "But sometimes it's worth it." Before Jaemin could respond, a figure approached Hyun Seok. Gone was the cocky swagger that had defined him earlier in the evening. Instead, he stood awkwardly, fidgeting with the hem of his jacket. Jaemin?" he said hesitantly. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" Jaemin raised an eyebrow but gestured for him to continue. Hyun Seok cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. "Look, I know I've been, well, a jerk. To you, especially. And I'm sorry. I didn't get it before, what you've been through, I mean. But now I do. Or at least, I'm trying to." For a moment, Jaemin said nothing, studying the other cadet carefully. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Apology accepted," he said simply. There was no bitterness in his tone, only calm acceptance. He knew better than anyone that change didn't happen overnight, but it started with moments like these. Hyun Seok let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Thanks," he muttered, scratching the back of his head. "And, good luck out there? Wherever you're headed next." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Jaemin and Yoonji alone once more. She smiled faintly, shaking her head. "Who would have thought?" she said wryly. "Hyun Seok apologizing? Maybe miracles really do happen." Jaemin chuckled softly, the sound surprising even himself. "Stranger things have happened," he replied as the night deepened. The remaining cadets drifted outside, drawn by the promise of starlight and fresh air. Jaemin followed, stepping onto the balcony that overlooked the academy grounds. The view was breathtaking, a vast expanse of darkness dotted with twinkling lights, each one representing a distant world waiting to be explored. For a moment, he allowed himself to dream of what might lie ahead. Would he find peace? Purpose? Answers to questions he hadn't yet asked? Yoonji joined him, leaning against the railing as she gazed out at the horizon. "What are you thinking about?" she asked after a while. Jaemin hesitated, then shrugged. "Everything," he admitted. "The past. The future. What comes next?" She nodded, her expression thoughtful. "It's okay to not have all the answers right now," she said gently. "Sometimes, the best thing you can do is take it one step at a time." He looked at her, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thanks," he said quietly. "For everything?" They stood there together, side by side, watching as the stars blinked in the distance. Around them, the sounds of laughter and conversation faded into the background, replaced by the quiet hum of possibility. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, none of them expected it to be. But for the first time, Jaemin felt ready to face it. Not because he was stronger or braver than anyone else, but because he wasn't alone anymore. Back inside the hall, the lights dimmed, casting long shadows across the empty tables. The banquet was over, but its impact lingered. Cadets parted ways, carrying with them lessons they would never forget. Some left with newfound respect for their peers. Others departed with questions they hoped to answer in time. But all of them, every single one, walked away changed. And somewhere in the midst of it all stood Jaemin, the boy with the damaged armor, who had taught them that true strength wasn't about appearances. It was about heart, about resilience, about finding light in the darkest places and carrying it forward, No matter how heavy the load got as the doors closed behind the last cadet, the grand hall fell silent once more. But the echoes of the evening remained, etched into the memories of everyone who had been there. For Jamin, it was a beginning, a chance to step into the unknown with courage, hope, and the knowledge that he didn't have to face it alone. The honor may have been battered, but the man beneath it was whole. And that, more than anything, was worth celebrating.